And I think just focus on the business model. What do you do different than everyone else? What's your moat? What's your defensibility? These were the common themes. So like, if there's one thing to take away, if you're a founder, all right, guys, I just attended the Western Growers annual meeting, and I'm going to give a full deep dive of attending the event, but specifically focusing on a Shark Tank style event they had at the annual meeting. So I hope you guys enjoy this. The Modern Acre podcast is presented by Corteva R&D, the research and development engine of Corteva Agriscience. Corteva is a global pure-play agriculture company that combines industry-leading innovation and high-touch customer engagement to deliver solutions for the world's most pressing agriculture challenges. Corteva's global R&D teams are dedicated to advancing science and technology for modern agriculture, tackling challenges like climate resilience, pest and disease pressure, weed resistance, and sustainable productivity. Through world-class research, Corteva R&D is pioneering solutions to shape the future of agriculture. Their robust pipeline is laser-focused on delivering differentiated products and lasting value to help farmers grow and protect their productivity now and in the future. Learn more by checking out the link in our show notes.
All right, Ty, I had major FOMO this week. Usually I'm like the conference guy. You send me to the biological summit, to FIRA, all these things, and I'm usually having to like give you updates as I'm there. We did the reverse this week. You were at an event. I was at home working, heads down, grinding, and you were just at yacht rock concerts and just on a boondoggle. So excited to hear about it.
Yeah, Tim, I mean, this is what we agreed. It's like you take all conferences north of LA, and I'll take all conferences south of LA. And yeah, as it turns out, most of the ag conferences are north of LA. I don't know what to say. That's just, it was in the original bylaws.
Yeah, we need to adjust our Mason-Dixon line or something. But you told me that the 100th annual meeting is in Maui, so maybe like we'll just flip-flop the Western Growers annual meeting. I'll take Maui next year.
That's a good trivia question. Maui's south of LA, right? I think so. So I'll take that one again.
Yeah, what is it? Don't do public geography?
Yeah, exactly. It's the first event, annual meeting I've been to. And honestly, I was just talking to someone a friend of the show, Matt Nicoletti, about the event. And it was a really, really well done event. I think that it's unique in that it's not like a typical like AgTech conference or something like that, where it's like specifically focused on one area of agriculture. Rather, this event was like kind of diverse in its content and events. It's kind of like a fun chance for people within Western Growers to come and bring their spouse, and there's golf and pickleball. I didn't do either, unfortunately, working too hard over here, but just a lot of cool variety of events. They had Jeremy Siegel, this world acclaimed economist, speak. Stuart Wolf, the chair, spoke as well. Like just like a lot of really interesting content. Some of which I attended, some of which I missed. But really, really interesting show, Tim. I think obviously for Western Growers, a big focus of that organization and is focused on trade is a big topic, was a big topic. Labor, really big topic of, managing labor pressure and challenges and cost. Biologicals were talked about quite a bit. Water, right? These were all some of the things that were addressed in the board of directors meeting. That was really interesting. So things that we're, I think, pretty aware of and talking a lot about on this podcast. But one event that was most interesting was they did a Shark Tank style event called Ag Sharks, where they had 4 companies, AgTech companies, present to 4 sharks. And I thought it was just actually a really, really cool event. Like sometimes I feel like these types of things can be cheesy. And like me and you are like usually those jerks that are the first to point out something being cheesy. But I think it was really, really well done. I think it was cool to see four companies, 4 founder CEOs pitch their company and hear from the sharks their feedback. And I think it was like pretty fair and good. And like they challenged the CEOs and founders. It wasn't just like, let's all just compliment each other. I think there was like really good feedback and questions and interesting companies and the diversity of companies. So I kind of wanted to unpack that with you, Tim, and talk about some of the companies, some of the feedback from the sharks, and some of my takeaways from it.
Nice. Yeah, excited to dive into it. So is this for money tie or like investment, or like what's the benefit of pitching like in this format?
Yeah, so they didn't have I think they intentionally made the decision to not have the sharks be writing checks on the spot like how they do in Shark Tank. I do think that would be really cool. I think that the companies, some of them were like actively fundraising, some of them were like not actively fundraising, but they're like, we're always open in conversation type of thing. Like Lumo has just closed like a $5 million round. And, they said, we're open to strategic allocation, right? Of if there's a good deal on the table type of thing. So I think that part of it would have been cool to have investors that were like ready to deploy. I think the problem and the challenge in this instance was the companies were at varying stages, right? So getting like sharks that are aligned in like the timing, the fundraising timing, whether they're like a lot, some of these guys are like early, very early seed, like Rob at Better Food Ventures and Danny, those are like early guys, and even Plug and Play, right? Like these were all the three investors were early stage. And so, but some of the companies were like outside of seed stage investment. So I think there was just a mismatch there from a ability to actually give a check.
Got it. That makes sense. And who are these sharks, Ty? Like you mentioned,
yeah. Let's call out the sharks.
Let's rate the sharks before we get into the companies here. Who we got?
So we have some friends of the show. So Danny Bernstein, CEO of the Reservoir, was one of the sharks, and he had some really good feedback. Rob Trice, we just had on the pod of Better Food Ventures, was on as well. And then the third investor was Robert Gray, the director of Plug and Play Tech Center. So we've heard Plug and Play, and they're the ones who sponsored the event. And then there was a farmer on the panel as well, on kind of like the shark panel, Kristen Smith Asaya, who is the president of JV Smith Companies. So she's a third generation, part of a third generation family fresh produce business, JV Smith Companies. They have operations in Arizona, Colorado, and Mexico, do a number of specialty crops. And she sits on the board of directors for Western Growers, based in Arizona. So it was a kind of cool group. Like I said, the investors themselves more on the early side. So yeah, so I think biggest takeaways, I thought it was seriously a 9 out of 10 event. I thought it was really, really well done, really high caliber companies. I do wish that there was like the actual, like, I'm going to make a decision on the spot here. But in reality, right, AgTech investing, there's like an incredible diligence process for these firms, and they're just not ready to issue a $50,000-$100,000 check on the spot, but that would be really cool. So I think it would be awesome to get that set up. But 4 companies, kind of a diverse group of companies came up, pitched. They did a video to start, which I think was actually really cool because the video allowed the founder to kind of talk about in the field and the product in a way that you can't really do on stage. And so it was like, 1 to 2 minute video to start, and then the founder CEO would do a pitch with slides to the audience. And then at the end of the pitch, they get in questions from the sharks. And so there was like a Q&A round with the sharks. And then at the end, the whole audience got to vote. And Tim, I think I sent you you could vote of buy, try, or pass or something. So it's basically like you would invest in this is option 1. You would like give it a try is 2, and then you're passing on it. Was how they graded the scale, and it was really interactive. You could kind of see the live voting, and then the winner at the end basically was who got the highest, I think, percent of buys from the audience. So the winner was announced at the end, which we'll get into. So yeah, I don't think the winner got any like monetary benefit or grant or anything like that, but they got the prestige of winning the Shark Tank event. And I think obviously there was a lot of influential farmers and investors in the room that I think hopefully led to good conversations for all 4 companies. But Tim, let's dig into the companies here and some of the feedback from the sharks that I thought was really interesting. So I want you to look up these companies as we go. The first startup was Trick Robotics. So Trick helps farmers control pests and disease with ultraviolet light as a replacement for chemical pesticides. So Tim, have you heard of Trick?
I've heard the name like at Fear and stuff. I haven't looked much into them. I'm pulling up their website now.
Yeah, pull up their website. Their founder and CEO is Adam Steger, who presented. They're based in San Luis Obispo, and really, Tim, like the big thing for them was they use light, right? So it's I think they're one of the only or one of the few using ultraviolet light to basically manage pest and disease pressure versus like laser, which I know laser is light, but kind of using ultraviolet light is kind of the specialty. They have their own vehicle and they're focused on strawberries specifically. So they very much are focused on a particular segment and then plan to grow out of those, but launching with the strawberry segment in particular.
Yeah, it looks pretty interesting. Looking at their website, definitely looks like very niche on strawberries, which I appreciate. Like when we talk about other companies starting in a certain geography on a certain crop makes a ton of sense before you scale. Provide a solution as a service so farmers only pay what they normally would for conventional pest and disease control. So I like that versus like trying to, sell very expensive units. The fact that it's offered as a service is pretty interesting. So as they scale, that'll be interesting to see if they can hold that model.
Yeah, so they talk about the solution is light. Light is chemical free. It's 100% organic. It's sustainable. It's no resistance. It's field tested, and they apply at night. That was actually a really interesting piece of this, Tim, is that they do all of their application at night. So it's like operating. What was unclear to me in a question I had is what that means in terms of farmer involvement, right? Like, is this a autonomous thing? He didn't focus a ton on that. So maybe that's like where they would want to get to is these things run at night and they're autonomous. So a grower doesn't have to be like out there and involved, but they run at night. And which I thought was really interesting from like an operational perspective. It's like a pro and a con because one, it doesn't get in the way of what other activities you're doing, but two, you have to presumably have someone there to support the application.
Totally, yeah, that's what I'm seeing here. It's not an electric vehicle, but it looks like it's autonomous. It's diesel powered with I think batteries on there to support the implement.
They were raising a $5 million seed round. They're focused on profitable economics and $5 million ARR in 2027. They talk about phase one being growth in strawberries. So a 10x robot fleet. They're focused on the Central Coast and expanding in Oxnard and Watsonville. And then phase two would be new crops and capabilities, deploying beneficial mite applicator, incorporating data analytics for strawberries, extend UV to vertical crops. So I think they want to get into wine grapes and leafy greens is, I believe, what is next. Tim, let's do bear case, bull case for each of these. I think that might be a helpful framework for us to go through these. Like I think the bull case for these guys, I like how they're starting in a particular crop, high value crop, while they perfect the technology and reduce the cost of the technology, right? I think is an important point. I think a lot of people are running that playbook. Two, I don't know about a ton of people doing ultraviolet light, so I think they might have kind of a head start at a minimum in the ultraviolet light category. I don't know how defensible that is. So those are I think for me, if the effectiveness is there, then I think they have a strong kind of bull case in that regard. Is basically kind of a moat around ultraviolet light and starting in strawberries and be able to expand from there in a profitable way.
Yeah, I think it's like, what is their desired outcome? Because I think they could probably carve out a really interesting business just sticking on berries versus like trying to be in every crop. Like when you start in a product like berries that's tremendously high value, there's more margin in there, more room to cover a service like this. I don't know what these costs are offsetting what the price point is, but as presumably if they move to more lower value crops, if they get into processing tomatoes or more like traditional row crops, there's going to be less budget available to offer this as a service. So they might see kind of decreasing revenue as they scale into other crop types. But I think it could, like as a standalone, it could just be, a really good niche option. But if they want to be all things to all people, that's probably going to be interesting to see how that rolls out.
Yeah, I mean, I think I hit on, if we go to bear case, I think that what involvement a farmer needs, if the application's at night, that just seems like, what level of involvement is required by the farmer, I think, on those night applications is an interesting question. Maybe it's moot if you have a really good labor force and you have people that can be available at night. But I know for us, anytime we're doing night picking or night harvesting, our dad's out there in the middle of the night, right? So I think that's just an interesting thing to solve for. And then on the machine, right? Is do you need your own machine? Is there anything special about your machine, or should you be kind of taking the hardware agnostic approach of an implement? So I think just thinking through that, I think every one of these robotics companies has to kind of solve for that. Is like, are they an implement? Are they their own autonomous machine? Do they stack on or layer on existing equipment? What does that look like? So there wasn't a clear, I think, path there or clear direction there, and maybe they have time to figure that out.
Totally. All right, Ty, what's the next company?
Okay, Tim, the next company was Drift Sense. I hadn't heard of this company. Look them up. It's Drift Sense. Elad Siegel was the co-founder and CEO. They're an Israel-based company. And the DriftSense gives growers field-scale, hourly resolved 10-day spray plans so you use less chemistry, avoid drift, and protect yields. This one was interesting, Tim. I think that this was, if I understand it, meteorology-based AI platform that basically can give guidance to how and when to spray. So it's basically, kind of a precision agriculture play in terms of let's use our materials more precisely and effectively, use less, save money, et cetera, and have better outcomes based on kind of weathered patterns. The idea being you spray something and knowing the weather conditions can impact efficacy, right? So in certain conditions you do X and in other conditions you do Y from an application perspective. This wasn't super clear to me, so I may be missing it a bit, but I think that was probably one of the challenges with the presentation is what exactly is the value proposition, how are growers paying for it, et cetera. What do you think of this company?
Yeah, I'm taking a look right now. I've looked a little bit. It's still, a little bit unclear on kind of the monetization of this, on what they're charging growers. My first question is is this like a variable rate recommendation? Like on our farm, like most of the spray rigs that we have, we just do kind of blanket applications, and we also work with a number of custom guys. So like in our scenario, we're doing some in-house applications as well as outsourcing to different aerial applicators or ground applicators during the season. So
there's no hardware integrations. So it's a software-based company. I do think that they incorporate your nozzle size and things that I think it might take inputs from your hardware setup to inform the recommendations. I think one of the sharks, I forget who it was, just called out this feels like just another dashboard, just another dashboard that a grower has to interact with and engage with. And is this just, is there a significant competitive advantage here that you would actually get the grower to spend time in a new platform? They don't have really any integrations to date. And I think that was another piece of feedback was how can this platform, there's a lot of smart guys on this on this founding team, but how do you integrate with other platforms so that you can get this data in front of the grower in the applications that they're using? And I think this is a thesis, Tim, we have is as a grower, you're only going to be in maybe two or three, maybe one, application softwares, right? Maybe it's irrigation, maybe it's your equipment, your tractors and equipment, John Deere, Operations Center, et cetera. You're gonna have maybe two, maybe three applications that you're spending time in, and everything else is kind of a distraction. So I think the key is for some of these companies, how do you integrate with these various tools that a grower's interacting with, and layer on top of that versus being, a grower's not going to have 10 application softwares. It's just full stop.
Yeah, especially each one trying to spin up a SaaS model where I think farmers are kind of a little bit fatigued by I need to pay this annual fee and everything is becoming SaaS that I think there's some resistance to. But yeah, I agree with you. I think making more integrations of tying into where recommendations for chemical applications are already happening, whether it's Agrian or using products like AgWorld where Recs are already happening. There's already this information kind of building in functionality there, I think would be interesting. And yeah, the hardware piece of a little bit more specific on, is this variable rate? Is this blanket of every farmer is going to have different spray rig setups, whether they own them or they outsource them? And I think having some clarity there, I think would make it a little bit more intuitive.
They have raised $3 million to date, and they're now raising an additional 2.5 million seed round, which is partially secured. So they were like in a great position, I think, to maybe get an investment kind of on the spot. I just think that the overall pitch was not super cohesive and focused about kind of their differentiation, how they go to market, how they expand. It was a little bit all over the place. But I think interesting nonetheless, and was cool to see. And again, I think there was what I'll say again, what was cool about the event, just the variety of these companies, but people really grinding and building businesses in the ad tech space. All right, Tim, we'll go to the next. The next presenter is Mapana. So Mapana. The company one-liner is Know As You Grow, so unclear. The presenter was Stefan Thobesen, who's the founder and CEO. They're headquartered in Washington State. Tim, this is really interesting. So they do essentially plant tissue testing, but they're positioning themselves as an AI company that, I'm thinking about all these. What was the robotics company that just raised? The AI company. This is
Orchard.
very much Orchard Robotics. We did a pod on them. Check it out. But I think this is another kind of AI play where, hey, we're going to take this data point from the field, and in this case, it's plant tissue. We're going to do analysis on it. We're going to slap some AI on it, as we say, and give recommendations to growers. The pitch was really interesting. I love this, Tim. He started with a quote from Beryl Markham. It says, "A seed in a farmer's hand holds 3 lives: its own, that of the person who may feed on it, and that of the person who grows it." Killer quote. That's frameable. But yeah, really interesting presentation. So essentially today, Tim, they have a machine, a plant tissue machine that I think a distributed machine. So it's like it comes on farm. That's like a plant tissue measurement device. And so you manually collect the samples, you put it into the machine, and then that sends up to their platform to do analytics on the tissue. I think they have kind of a vision in the future for automatic robot collection, right? So you can actually have a drone or an infield robot do the tissue collection as opposed to the manual collection. And then they take weather data, the plant data that they collect, fertigation data, and soil data to provide insights, predict yield, automate input application, personalized growth, et cetera. It's just, slap some AI on it. I think that it was interesting. I'm a little wary of some of these just like slap some AI on it companies. They also aren't necessarily focused on it. They were a little all over the place where they are focusing the markets that they're focusing on, and unclear on kind of the level of traction and some of the details I think we're missing. And I think probably the biggest miss for this company was, we get this program for the company about each of the startups. They have their website listed here. Their website isn't live. I'm like, guys, you got to get, if you're providing your website, man, you got to sprint, you got to hire someone for $1,000 on Fiverr. You got to get a website up for this big opportunity of pitching all of these growers and investors. So I thought that was a big miss. You got to have your website up, guys.
Yeah, I just looked it up, saw that the website's not there. Yeah, it seems like they're very early stage, like it's still a little bit vague and vague on what they're actually intend to do on Western growers. It says they analyze plant systems for fertilizer and mineral intake and provides input recommendations and tracks soil health. So yeah, still a little unclear. Like farmers currently, like we pull do sap analysis, tissue samples where we're pulling leaf matter, getting insights from there and making decisions later on in the growing season. So you're kind of replacing the traditional practice that happens where growers and their agronomists or their PCAs are taking these samples throughout the season to dictate kind of what happens later in the season. Yeah, I'm trying to think of like you're trying to displace that. Again, like I don't think growers want another dashboard. There's already kind of a system here. Like the on-farm testing is kind of interesting where like when we pull saps, it's, a cumbersome process where it takes an hour to pull, different sets of tissue, you mail it to a lab. So like, could you improve the turnaround time there and have like a, automated robot doing this, sending to the cloud where you're not having to mail tissue back and forth in the mail, like that could be kind of interesting. But yeah, unclear on kind of the business model of like, would they license this technology to like a Nutrient or Wilbur Ellis or sell direct to growers? I think some opportunities in the space, but yeah, I think it's a little aspirational of like, we'll just use AI to do analysis on things that farmers need.
Yeah. So on the business model, he did hit on that of basically going to the food companies like Tomato Food Co., Coffee Food Co., where they're providing those level of data inputs to them, as also irrigation companies, laboratories, agricultural input distributors. So kind of this go-to-market model, not necessarily at the farm level. So I don't quite understand the dynamics there of who's paying for what. But Tim, I think like we need to do a whole pod on this topic, but the AI in agriculture, I think that there's something there. I think it's a huge, huge opportunity. I don't know how we get there with these point solutions. I just feel like there can't be like an AI recommender for this and for this and this and this and all of the things. Like I don't know what the answer is here. Like to some mega startup, maybe it's Orchard AI. I don't know. I think we have some questions about their model. But how do you get away from these point solutions where, yeah, I could see a future where there's sensors in the field, there's sensors all around, and you have AI that's doing predictive analysis on all these things. Like this is Climate Corporation, this is Orchard AI. Like this is all the same stuff. It's take sensors, take inputs, and provide actionable insights we've been hearing for a decade. Recommendations to a grower. I don't know how we get from here to there and how startups handle this, because I'm not saying this is easy. I'm saying this is quite hard because you have to start with a point solution, but it's a little overwhelming. And I just don't know how you get adoption fast enough at the grower level to have something like this be successful. I mean, this is similarly Mineral, right? Mineral was doing kind of like, again, this data collection thing with their rover, essentially trying to create data inputs on the farm for every, right? Like that's the goal, is how do we create these data points on the farm for everything? And then you put it into an AI model and magically you know how to farm better. But it's hard. If Mineral funded by Alphabet couldn't do it, it's a tricky problem. I don't know what your thoughts are there.
Yeah, it's like I see both your points. It's just such a fragmented market. It's hard to pull this all together where there are like hundreds of crops and every farm situation is unique. So to like make this really like useful on a farm, it's like every farm needs its own model, like based on like their unique set of circumstances, where it's just hard to kind of like make a one size fits all. Like as we've seen with anything in agriculture, like the one size fits all approach just rarely works depending on what you're trying to build. And I think it's like similar challenges here. Just like a thing like table grapes, there's over 100 different varieties of table grapes planted in California. So like you could say like we're solving table grapes, but you need, there's the amount of models you would need to address every single use case in ag is just insane.
Last point on Mapana, they obviously no website. Come on, guys, get the website up. Just even a landing page, collect some emails. And then 2, Tim, they were raising $10 million, which is a pretty hefty round. And one of the sharks, I think it was Rob, asked about use of funds. As a founder CEO, you're raising money. Your use of funds, use of proceeds needs to be like so quick to have a good answer to that. And he didn't really answer the question.
Holiday party.
Exactly. So he didn't really have a good answer to that. I'm like, that's a big miss. You're raising $10 million. You got to know where that money is going. Your plan for it. That's a big red flag for investors. And I think that was a big red flag during the presentation, was just not having a really good answer to that. So, all right, Tim, let's wrap this up with Lumo. Friend of the show, Devin, he presented on Lumo. They're doing a smart irrigation valve. They invented it, apparently. They invented the smart irrigation valve. They've been focusing on the wine grape segment, and their company one-liner is helping growers irrigate to plan with block-level precision. Devin's awesome. He's been on the podcast before. You should check out that episode. Part of their whole thesis is making irrigation accountable, right? Like actually, what's your plan, and having accountability to irrigate to that plan. And great, really interesting product. They've got great traction with wine grape growers. And he did a great pitch about kind of where they're at. They actually just raised a $5 billion round, are expanding into new territories and new markets, Tim. I think overall, really, really strong pitch. They said, yeah, current opportunity, they're not actively raising, but will consider reopening the round to a strategic investor. I like that. I like that framing, Devin.
Always be raising.
Always be raising. Yeah, it's super, super smart. And I think was a pretty impressive presentation. In this one, I was so impressed by the sharks. They were just asking good questions, and it was cool to like, we were like inside a pitch, really. Like it felt like we actually got to see behind the scenes of some of the questions that are actually asked, and I think that was really unique. I wish we could got even more of that. They asked Devin about competitors, about Netafim, which is a sponsor of the reservoir, right? And how he views them. And he talked about Lindsay and some of these other irrigation automation companies, which I thought was cool. One thing that I got to shout out Rob for is Devin talked about basically they own the Sonoma market. Basically, he made a comment of they own the Sonoma market, and Rob was like kind of calling him out on that. And he was like, you're on, I forget how many 100 acres or 1,000 acres. He's like, is that owning Sonoma? I think they have more than 5,000 acres in Sonoma. And Devin's point was, I think they've gotten enough momentum and traction with substantial growers in Sonoma that they feel like they've cemented themselves as kind of a leader in that segment. But I think Rob kind of like called him out of like, really, do you really own it? And is that the mentality you should have? And I think Devin even recognized that. I think he posted about it after the fact of like having that stay hungry mentality of like, and I think especially in irrigation automation, which is a highly competitive market, I don't think you should ever rest on your laurels, right? That you've got it. And so I thought that was actually really good pushback from Rob. And I think it was well received by Devin, but those are some of these cool moments that you don't really get in a typical conference environment, is like some of these like tactical things.
Totally. Yeah. We've had Devin on the podcast before. Big fan of what Lumo is up to. They've been, hyper focused on vineyard. We don't grow vineyards, so I haven't really like looked at kind of applicability for our farm, but I think it makes a lot of sense where they're kind of solving just the nuance of vineyard automation, downstream valve. They obviously rolled out a pump controller earlier this year to kind of do all the irrigation on a particular plot. I think they're just kind of progressive and forward thinking, like Devin's had, prior success outside of agriculture, working in technology type businesses, and to kind of bring new, fresh perspective and build from the ground up is really cool. I mean, it reminds me of Tim Butcher from Agtonomy, like successful kind of outside ag, and now he's building like a really cool business in ag. So like cool to see kind of this new wave of companies with fresh perspectives coming in.
All right, and drum roll, please. Lumo won, so that was really cool to see. I voted to buy Lumo. Congrats, Lumo! And it was really cool. I thought the event was really impressive. Rob made the comment. We're picking on Rob here, but Rob did great. Rob said at the end, like, to the moderator, he was like, "Thanks for bringing us awesome companies." And I think he said, "For not bad companies," but it's so true. I think it was like really high caliber companies. I loved the diversity, and I loved the direct feedback of the sharks. And I think they balance like not just being jerks for the sake of being jerks and like asking good questions. I think there was a few themes from the sharks for all the companies. One was like there was definitely. They liked the focus, right? Trick, Lumo, they were more focused on a particular segment, and everyone liked that. And I think just focus on the business model. What do you do different than everyone else? What's your moat? What's your defensibility? These were the common themes. So like, if there's one thing to take away, if you're a founder, how are you being focused? What's your go-to-market strategy? And then just having, clear understanding of your differentiation, I think was really, really important and kind of came through.
That's awesome. All right, Ty, like few housekeeping items. What was the coffee situation? Was there cold brew at these annual meetings? Nothing?
They had coffee, great lunch was served. It was a high quality event all around. No cold brew on site. So big miss from the Western Growers team. I think next year, let's get cold brew sponsored by the Modern Acre. Walt, just have your people talk to our people. My people is Tim, so he just called
my people is you. So yeah, just talk to my assistant.
Talk to our assistant. So yeah, miss on cold brew. In fact, on my way out from the event on Tuesday afternoon, I stopped because it's at the Hotel Del in Coronado, great venue in San Diego. I went to go get a cold brew for the road, Tim. Guess how much my cold brew was? I got a cold brew, simple cold brew.
Coronado Island, San Diego cold brew on the way home. I'm guessing $7.
$9. I was like, yeah, can I get a large cold brew? And they're like, yeah, sure. And they were like 873, and I was like, what? Am I at a football game? What is going on?
Cold brew inflation is insane. The local coffee shop in town that we drive to on the way to the farm, Wine and Roses tie, they only have large cold brews and it's like $9. So I just stop going. It's like that's usually like the 6-7 range is where I draw the line. Like I just can't do it at $9.
I still do it, and I will go into credit card debt for the $9 cold brew. Put it on the Modern Acre card.
All right, Ty, if you did it again, you would like register early for the pickleball and the golf. You're like, we're waitlisted for these events. You got the short stick.
We've been just getting after it, Tim, and busy, and so I really wanted to do golf or pickleball. Didn't either, but maybe the next event at the 100th event is in Maui. I think next year, Tim, me and you should MC the Ag Sharks event in Maui. Let's make it happen, Western growers. I think you need a little juice to Ag Sharks next year.
Yeah, I would be happy to do that, Walt. Just have your people talk to our people.
I'll text you after this, Walt. All right, guys, thanks for listening. We appreciate you. We'll be back next week.